What are your thoughts on what Janice was saying there, James, in terms of Egypt's role in this, the international community, but also Egypt, international community? James Cleverly on broadcast this morning talking about this, talking about what he wants, restraint from Israel, but also in terms of what other actors in the area should do. What do you make of all that?
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I mean, the people in Gaza, in the north of Gaza, were given relatively short notice in terms of their need to exit from there. Where are they going to go? I mean, unless those safe routes are opened up, then it's going to be difficult for them to be displaced into areas of safety. So I do have some sympathy for that, and I think the international community has a role to play within this entire conflict. The events of last week were appalling, and Israel has every right to meet retribution on Hamas. But lots of people in the Gaza area are not part of Hamas. They are innocent bystanders, and they have a right to be safe. So they have been given notice, but perhaps not as much notice as they could have been.
The figures, I don't know the exact figures at the moment, Esther, but we're looking at around 3,000 people plus if you add up all the people in Israel and all the people in Gaza who have lost their lives over the past week or so.
Yeah.
Are we just on a march to full-scale war between Israel and Hamas here?
Well, it looks that way, and you can understand from the Israelis' perspective the need to defend themselves. But I think the consistent losers in all of this from basically over the last few decades have been the Palestinians, because Hamas knew that they were carrying out these attacks that were going to result in the death of many innocent Palestinians. There are very many questions to ask, obviously, about the Israeli intelligence agency's actual intelligence failure.
They failed.
Exactly. There are many questions to be asked about this, and Bielby Netanyahu is effectively on his way out after this military operation is over. His opinion polls have plunged. I think the vast majority of the country do.
Well, never underestimate Benjamin Netanyahu. I mean,
at the moment,
there's always a way back for him.
Well, the thing is, preceding these attacks, he already was quite a contentious figure, particularly with his reforms with the
corruption
Supreme
allegations and all the rest of it.
Exactly. Yeah. So he didn't look like he was in a good position anyway. But the point is, we cannot forget that at the end of the day, the ability for the individual Palestinian to maneuver this situation is extremely limited. I mean, we talk about why haven't they gotten rid of Hamas? They're effectively hostages of Hamas. Hamas, since 2006, since they came in power, have been happy to use money, humanitarian aid that should go towards, putting together a coherent police force or waste management or electricity and water. Exactly. They've been happy to use that money to fire rockets at Israel. I mean, we talk about the fact that
they've brainwashed a generation as well.
Exactly, and it's very easy to do that because this is they've lived in a cycle of violence their whole life. This is all they've ever known.
But how much sympathy should we have, James Bielby, for people in Gaza? Because obviously I have sympathy for innocent civilians, but Hamas I have no sympathy for whatsoever. And we talk about this kind of brainwashed generation, the young population within Gaza, many of whom will support the actions of Hamas.
Yeah, well, they've been politicised by their circumstances, I suppose, having grown up in that cycle of violence. They don't know any different, and they would be given propaganda by Hamas. They're told certain things that they believe to be true. So you can, whilst don't necessarily agree with them, you can understand the circumstances under which they would come to believe what Hamas tell them. And they have no choice but to comply with that, because they live in effectively a state where if they didn't support Hamas, they may well be persecuted themselves.
And I mean, it's very easy for them to have a very negative view of Israel. I mean, we're talking about the fact that the Israelis have cut off water and electricity. The bigger question should be, why haven't Hamas been able to independently supply water and electricity to Gaza? Yes, exactly. What has happened to all that humanitarian aid? I mean, we talk about it from the perspective of course, it's a tragedy that these people don't have access to that, and it's been the Israelis providing that. But the original question should be, why does a different country have to provide your water and electricity?
But Hamas have no interest in running an effective country. They are a terrorist organisation. They want to destroy Israel. They want to wipe it off the face of the planet. And they are they are an organisation that doesn't care about its people. They're weaponising
you can't actually. I think you've hit the nail on the head. You cannot actually negotiate with a country whose sole purpose or whose stated purpose is to wipe you off the map. And I think that's where we start.
And not just Israel, which they absolutely want to do, James Bielby, but certainly its own people as well. I mean, we're hearing reports that people have been. Some people are moving, of course, to the south, but some have been told not to move because they want the civilian casualty to be high. Hamas wants its own people to die and be, as they would put it, martyrs.
Yeah, they want those martyrs. I mean, they don't believe in a two-state solution, but they would equally argue that Benjamin Netanyahu doesn't believe in the two-state solution either. So I understand where they're coming from in terms of that perspective. Don't necessarily agree with it, but you're entirely right to say that it actually suits their propaganda to have pictures of babies who've been killed by Israeli forces.
Yeah, it's interesting as well. I mean, there are certainly I've only seen evidence of babies who've been killed by Hamas. I was actually sent some pictures this week on that, and by an Israeli contact, and I never ever want to see them again. Let me tell you. Where do you think this goes, James Bielby? What happens next? Are we just inevitable full-scale war here? What about the international community? We've got Polish elections this week, Ukraine, Russia, America, Iran. I mean, where are we with this?
Well, I mean, where does it end? Israel will win, of course, because they've got more might and more power and the international community behind them. The role of Iran is obviously quite worrying, and you've got British and US military assets ready to pounce should that be necessary. I think it ends with, it doesn't end soon. It ends with a victory for Israel, but how many people have to die?
And what does that look like? What does a victory look like? Because unfortunately, I don't think this is going to work, this kind of siege of Gaza and entering with having boots on the ground. I don't think it's going to work, because this is what happens repeatedly. You have Hamas firing rockets, the Israelis go and clear out their inventory, the Iranians send them more money, and then they just build up stock again. They're happy to use their people as crash pads in their murderous kind of operation to effectively wipe Israel off the map. It is a cycle. And, I was saying I was hoping that given the track record of the Israelis going in, clearing out, cycle of violence, Palestinians dying and effectively becoming more radicalized, will we have a more cerebral approach to how to handle this?
It doesn't look that way, does it, James?
No, we're not going to have a more cerebral approach.
But this is the thing, because it goes against our instincts. Exactly. We've seen, women being murdered, kidnapped, babies being killed, all of that. So it goes against our instincts to say, actually, let's act in the best long-term interest. Yeah. But that's not what we're going to see here.
That's what we need, some form of peace process, but that doesn't look like it's going to happen anytime soon.
It seems further away than ever, really, doesn't it? Yeah.